I want to welcome everyone to the House of the Lost Sheep of Israel. I'm Elder Michael Johnson. And we're going to be going through today. We're going to be looking at Romans, what we're going to be picking up from last week. However, I do want to make a small announcement. I spoke, we was in the back yesterday doing Daniel, and Deacon DeFrost, he actually was informing me that some teachings are still out there, that new things is coming up that's really disheartening. And things like that actually really kind of what bothers me. For the simple fact of people believing that chickens is coming from dinosaurs and different things like that. I don't know, for some reason, we as a whole can capture people and keep them there based on men's philosophy. I don't know why this is rampant in Israel. However, it's there. You know, he's one of the ones that he kind of goes around and floats around and fight back and forth with different camps and different things. But they continue to teach this nonsense. However, they have large followings where people believe in this nonsense, which is disheartening altogether. Why it's so important to where you watch where you learn from, because where you learn from, you should be able to resort back to which the foundation they're using to teach you in. So you should be able to see it in the book. The same as when many of us was in school. The school gives you homework to where, for example, it's taking a spelling test. There's spelling tests where they give you the words in a book. You take that book home and you study those words. And when you get back there, they give you the test for those words. Those words you was able to see. They was in a book. The same as they give you stuff based on whatever their history was or economics, whatever the thing was. But you can always revert back to the book and see what they was talking about. However, it has greatly changed today. People now can reference a book using that as the point of reference, but they're not going to reference or use anything within the book to share with you and give you a false knowledge. That's disheartening, because the greater thing is they're getting a lot of Israel. So I just wanted to just get that off my chest. But what we're going to do, we're going to pick this up. Last week we was in verse 15 in chapter 6, and we got to move over to 16. Because Paul is letting us know a few things that is highly important on how he's working. So we're going to move over here. We're going to get started up with this. And as we always do, don't worry about the precepts that's going to be ran, because at the end of this session, I will go through, and with that, I will go through it and we'll fill it in with the precepts that is there and need to be put in. So we're going to look this up at verse 16. And it tells us, excuse me, it says, know ye not that whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants to obey. Excuse me. And that is telling us something very, very serious. Because whom you yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom ye obey. And he's saying that in a double negative in a certain way. Because some of us we're going to serve our bodies. And it's going to be to sin. It's going to be the flesh. And that's why he says, rather of sin unto death, or obey or obedience unto righteousness. This is really important. We have to understand here. He's reminding us in this verse, he's reminding us that we're going to yield our bodies to something. We're going to yield our bodies to something. And we want to focus on this right here. I want you to focus on that I have highlighted. Because we're going to yield our bodies to something. Either to sin unto death, or of obedience unto righteousness. So these are alternatives that we have to look at. Alternatives we need to look at. And many of us are going to do this and not really recognize what we really are doing all the time. Because if you obey and be obedient to the works of flesh, then you are a servant, a slave to sin. It's clear as day. And if we're going to be a servant to sin in flesh, then you cannot be a servant or obedient to righteousness. It's impossible. This is what he's given us as alternatives. These are alternatives we have to look at. How do we know that these alternatives is there? Because he's telling you a couple of things. I'm going to put up another Romans over here. I'm going to put another one up here. Because I want to show you what he's saying in the same place. In the same identical place. But we're going to go up a little bit, but I want you to see the difference on what's happening here. You see right here in verse 14, because he's telling you the reason. And it says, for sin shall not have dominion over you. So it shouldn't have dominion over flesh. Because if you obey flesh, then you're going to be doing sin. This is what he wants you to see. And it says, for ye are not under the law, but under grace. Because under the law is doing things that is according to the flesh. He's pretty clear here. He's pretty clear here. He even gave you comparisons when you was looking in verse 13. He's sitting there saying, neither yield your members as instruments of unrighteousness unto sin, but yield yourselves unto God. He giving you a comparison and even getting into the reason as we go down. So, for sin shall not have dominion over you. This is how Paul's been talking the entire time with us. The entire time. You get down and you look at verse 19. He says this. He makes sure it's this. I speak after the manner of men because of the infirmities of your flesh. The infirmities of your flesh. For as ye have yielded your members servants to uncleanness and iniquity unto iniquity, and iniquity unto iniquity. This is what we are doing. Uncleanness. And we going from sinful acts to sinful acts. And this is what we have yielded our members, our bodies over to. Even so now yield your members servants to righteousness unto holiness. Because you can't serve God and mammon. You're going to love one and you're going to hate the other. This is why he's so important here. to where if we yield our body any type of way to unrighteousness, that body becomes a complete servant unto sin. I don't care what that service is that you serving that with your body. I don't care what it is. You're gonna be serving sin. This is why it's so important to where when you looking at things and you making decisions, you want to make sure you're not sinning or being obedient according to the flesh. Because if you're going to be obedient to the flesh, you're going to be a servant to sin. Let's look at something there to find out a little bit more. We're going to go over the Psalms and we're going to look at 145. And we're going to drop it down to verse 17. And it says, "And the Spirit of God is righteous, 100%, in all his ways," making sure it's a clear distinction between flesh and spirit. Clear distinction between the two. And the bigger part is, and holy in all his works. So anything that you yielding to righteousness is holy unto God. He's clear. So all his ways is righteous, but all the ways that he keep flipping it back and forth, what Paul is doing in Romans, he keep going back and forth to show us what we're doing. To show us what we're doing. And we'll do it in many kind of ways. Yielding our members to unrighteousness. And if we doing those, how can we sit there and say that we doing righteous things for the Spirit of God and we yielding all our ways evil? It won't make any sense. These are things we have to think about. We have to really realize, come to the realization that we are doing things that is not pleasing in the eyes or the sight of God. But most of us not going to believe that. We're going to think that we're going to be righteous in our own sight, which is doing the same things as Job. The identical things as Job. Doing these teachings and these doctrines that is not right based on the judgments. Because those judgments is your doctrines and your teachings, and you act those out. Those are the judgments on what you have done. It'll go into this, so where we look at Psalms 119. And it'll tell you this even more clear. 119, we're going to look at verse 160. We'll go down there to 160, and we're going to, I'm trying to get it back. Let me try to do it this way. I don't know. Let me see. 119. I don't know why I just want to sit there. 119. Let me see. And we're going to do 160. And it just jumps over. I don't know why it's doing that. Let me try one. If not, I just read it out. If it does, yeah, it's doing the same thing on both. So what we'll do, we'll just read it, and then we'll go from there. But Psalms 119, verse 160, which is part of the precept, it says, "Thy word is true from the beginning." Thy word, who is God's word, is true from the beginning. "And every one of thy righteous judgments endure forever." Every one of his judgments, every one of his doctrines, every one of his teachings endures forever. This is seeing the righteousness of God, because all his judgments is saying. So if you're gonna serve and be obedient to him, that's righteousness to him, because you're doing what he said to do and not doing what you said to do. This, no matter what it comes to. No matter what it comes to. Show you an example here. Show you an example here. We're gonna go to Philippians chapter 2, just to show you something. And we're gonna see something. You're gonna see what Yahushua did. And you're gonna see what happened. No matter what, he was obedient. It says, but he made himself of no reputation, took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death. He became obedient unto death. Even death of the cross. Doesn't matter. Wherever the Most High is leading you, you're going to be obedient. That's what he's seeking. Obedience is the key. Because if we can't be obedient, then it don't make any sense to do it any other way. We're going to go to Psalms 119. We're going to still hit another one there. And we shouldn't have no problem there, because I don't know why it's doing this in 119. But we're going to go right here. 119, 142. And that tells us, thy righteousness, the righteousness of God, not the righteousness of a preacher, not the righteousness of any man, not the righteousness of any woman trying to teach you some silliness. Thy righteousness, who? God. Who? Yahweh. Who? The Most High God is an everlasting righteousness. In thy law is the truth. His law is to love your Lord thy God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength. Most people gonna run you to everywhere else. They're gonna run you over to telling you what he's telling you not to do. The law, which most people and what most of us fail to realize, is when you get in the law, it's not telling you what not to do. That's the problem we have today. The law is telling you, with God, you love the Lord thy God with all your heart, all your mind, all your strength, all your soul. And the second part of that law is to love thy neighbor as you love thyself. That is the law. People will run you contrary to somewhere else. They will run you contrary to somewhere else. Meaning this. The law, if you drive, the law, it has a speed limit. The speed limit, let's say for example, is 65. That's the speed limit. It's 65. That is the law. It says maximum speed limit, meaning anywhere between 0 and 65 is the speed limit. That's your limit. Now, when you want to go see what you should not have been doing, you go over that limit, and an officer of the law is going to stop you. And he's going to read to you and let you know that you have violated that law, something that you shouldn't have done. And they got penalties when you go over, you go 5, 10, 15, 20 miles or you score into those triple digits. They have penalties for those. The same as you see in Exodus. This is the thing that's going on. So this is what we got to remember. The law is telling you something to do. And you stay within those boundaries, not something he got to remind you. He got to keep telling you on what to do. That's what you see in Exodus, and people teach Exodus as the law. That's the problem we have today. That is the main situation we look at all the time, and that's a big issue we have today. When you go over here to Psalms in chapter 23, picking that up at verse 6, he says this. He says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Why? See, because he's summing this up. But it's telling you right up here at the beginning, the Lord is my shepherd. The problem with this is we have a lot of people want to sit there and they'll sit there and tell you a man is their shepherd, which is craziness. You got many men out there and they will tell you they are a shepherd of God, and that's not the truth. How can they be a shepherd and they never been where this shepherd is and was when he first came down? Because the only one who has been in heaven is he who came down from heaven. But the problem we have is men want to be put on the same level as Christ. But it's telling you in verse 6, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Why? Because if you following the Lord, the Spirit of Christ, the Spirit of God, you following him, and you doing and being obedient to that, that's telling you clearly, goodness and mercy going to follow you forever all the days, and where you going to dwell. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is clear as day. It's not complex. But we have let people tell us, get in a whole bunch of stupid silliness. And somehow they're going to inject themselves in there. And put themselves as one of those people. So we're going to be obedient to who we're going to be obedient to. And if you're going to serve and yield yourselves servants to a man, then you're going to yield yourselves unto sin, because you're yielding yourselves unto flesh. And you're going to be obedient to it. So when he say, I need this, you will do that. I need this, you're going to do that. He going to keep doing this thing. Because now he is the shepherd and you follow him. Let's look at something. Let's look at something here. Let's go over here to Genesis. We got to go to Genesis. We got to pick this up at verse 17. And it says, and remember I, even I, do bring a flood of water upon the earth. And this is all spiritual. However, people are going to read it literal. But it's spiritual. It says to destroy all flesh, wherein is breath of life under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. Why? Because he's going to bring a bunch of different doctrines upon the earth to see whether you're going to follow him or no. And we know, we just looked at, the Lord is my shepherd. So if he's the shepherd, we shouldn't be following anyone else saying they are a shepherd. This is clear. However, we follow other people based on their charismatics, and they sitting there saying, well, I like this person. I like this, what they do with the music over here. I like this, they do the praise dancing over here. I like this because he sits there and he can run up and down the aisle and he do all this stuff, and then he speaks in this confusion. He does all these things. And it's a lot of people there, so they all can't be wrong. You think about those 100 sheep. 99 of them was wrong, and only one was right. So these things you got to keep in mind. And the same thing is, he's telling you, I'm going to bring a flood of knowledge upon the earth to destroy all flesh, because he's going to kill flesh. But it depends on which one you follow. Because if it had breath in it and you under heaven, you're included. Because everything in the earth shall die. And whatever connected to the flesh is going to die with it. Better yet, let's go a little bit deeper on this and find out what's going on. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, picking it up at verse 7. We just went through this yesterday. It says, then shall the dust return to the earth as it was. It's going to return to the same form, the same state as it was from the beginning. He formed us from the dust of the ground. He formed us from the dust of the ground. And that flesh is going to return back to the dust. It's going to return. So if it's going to return from which it came, why are you yielding yourselves to flesh and being obedient to flesh? Because the Spirit, if you being obedient to the Spirit of God is going to go back from who gave it. And it was Yahweh, God. It's got to go back. So who should we be yielding our members to? To be in debt to God. It's telling you a lot of stuff here, and we're going to look at something here that's really help us just clear up some stuff. Because just like I said, I talk about this here and there, but a lot of us like to sit there and we like to down Cain. But we downing something that's something we like, because we just like Cain. So how can you down somebody you just like? Because we just like him. And we get mad when we yield our members to something and get upset. And the Lord said unto Cain, why are you wroth? What you mad for? Why is your countenance fallen? Same as a Christian preacher. We were talking about this in the back again yesterday. And he, my wife's brother-in-law, he texted me a text, and it was just talking about an analogy on how God did all these things. But it was an analogy, not one a scripture in it. But the man has taken bits and pieces and then he formulated it a whole nother way, which technically made no common sense. So I responded, and I gave him scriptures and not something based on an analogy. And he responded. He said he was just reaching out. I was just reaching out. However, I will not bother you no more. I responded. And I told him I gave you all scripture. However, okay. My thing is, I'm not going to sit there and tell him in any way, okay, it's cool, this and that. All I did is, he sent one, I sent one back. But he decided that since I didn't want to side or see something that a way that a Christian sees it, it was a problem. Because it was according to the flesh. It was based on probably someone he was really close to that wrote it. The Most High is not a respecter of person. Same as you or I should never even be also. Should not ever be respecter of any flesh. God's word will always reign supreme in all things. So the same thing here, Cain did something his way, which is a lot of us do. We're going to do things our way. And then when it's not accepted, why you going to get upset with God? You yield your members to things of the flesh, which is things that's enmity to God, but then we want to present them to God as if we did something that was right for God. As soon as we bring it, God don't accept it, then we get mad. You see, that don't make any sense. But we do it. We do it. The same thing, we sit there and go play the lottery. Say, if I hit the lottery, hit it for $15 million, I'm going to get a church all this money. Yeah, people can't say they don't say it because I done heard it too many times. The Lord said, why are you wroth? But he made a key statement here. Verse 7. He said, if thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? If you do well. Letting you know, one second. Yeah, just letting you know, if you do and yield your members to righteousness, wouldn't you be accepted? I'm telling you right here, clear as day. If you do it well to righteousness, how can he not accept you? It's impossible for him not to. He cannot do that. So if he's doing this, how can you yield your body to unrighteousness and then the unrighteousness you try to make it yield to God and he don't accept it? And that's why he says that. Because if you do it not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. You should mortify your members and yield it to God. It's telling you this right here. So it's a plan that you can do. The only way you can do this in the correct way, to yield your members, because the law is written against that flesh. Because if you do one thing, if you love the Lord thy God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, you is in the speed limit of the law. Soon as you break the law, you're going to manifest all those things that's in the flesh. He's telling you this right up front. You stay in the law, you're good. Same thing here. Same thing like I told them. We're going to pound this to where I know people are going to be able to quote it backwards and forward. Same thing what Paul wants you to see. So within the law, to love your Lord thy God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength. You're good. Soon as you break the law, they got to read these to you. You break the law, were you breaking the law in adultery? Or were you breaking the law in fornication? Were you breaking the law with uncleanness? Or were you breaking the law with lasciviousness? Or could it be that you was breaking the law with idolatry? Or witchcraft? Or you went over on that other road and you was really going over the limit and you got into hatred and variance, ill emotions. Because the law is to love your Lord thy God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and your strength. And you're going to yield your members over to that. And second is just like to it. When you go on the other side of it, you sit there when you come down and you in flesh and you love your neighbor as you love thyself. That's the law. You breaking the law, you're going to break them over there. And that's what you yield your members to. You can yield your members, and they say, how can I yield my members to idolatry? How can I yield this to witchcraft? Have you ever seen people go get those lucky feet? Those lucky rabbit's foot? They'll get lucky rabbit foot and go to racetracks and bet with the lucky rabbit foot in their pocket, saying they're going to win. Because the foot is lucky. If the foot was that lucky, how did the rabbit lose his foot? Because majority of rabbit's foot that you see in the store are real. So you tell me, how did he lose his foot and the foot is lucky? These are just things we got to think about. But we yielding our members in sinning unto death. Because when you're doing that, you yielding everything over to witchcraft. You wish cotton was a monkey. But it's a way out of it. The way out of this, you have to get rid of the flesh. You have to remove that flesh and get rid of it. How? In Colossians chapter 2, picking up at verse 14, it says, blotting out the handwriting and ordinances that was against us. These are against us over here. And the only way to get rid of it, you have to mortify that flesh. How? One, it was contrary to us. So if it's contrary to us, we have to figure out together as a whole how to get rid of this that is contrary to us, because if it's contrary to God, then it's contrary to us. So it's only one way we can do this. Because if we can get this flesh and get out of this flesh and circumcise our flesh and get out of it, we can't fulfill these over here. We can't fulfill this. Now it's impossible. Now we're going to be looking to do obedience just to righteousness. So the only way we can do that, we have to take off this clothes and clothe ourselves in righteousness. Like going in the dressing room. You're going to take off one set of clothes and you're going to clothe yourself in something else. These are things we have to look at, things we have to do. And we have to sit there and we have to see where it was contrary to us because it didn't fit. It looked good, but it don't fit. Why? Because it's contrary. It's going to make us do things that is not right. That'll make us sin unto death. So if we do that, we have to take that out the way, and the only way we can do this, we have to nailing it to his cross. We have to put it in some, let it suffer unto death. Let it just wiggle and move around and squirm and all that right up on the tree until it die. And it might take it 10 to 100 years for it to die. But we got to leave it there. Walk away from it and let it die. You say, man, but it's up there. It's suffering up on that tree for years. You leave it there. It's contrary to you. Don't go back and take it off that tree. You leave it on the tree. Well, it's hungry. Okay, leave it on the tree. It's thirsty. Leave it on the tree. But what we're going to do, because as soon as it comes down, flesh, I promise you, is going to do one of these. It's going to do one of them. And are we going to sit there and yield our members over to that? No. Not if we're going to do it right. We have to lay that aside and get rid of all things that is contrary to God. Meaning we don't come there with no luggage. Meaning this. In Hebrews chapter 12, picking it up at verse 1, it says, wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight. And you look in that mirror, next time you go, you got to look in the mirror. You sit there and say, flesh, you've been weighing me down. You've been weighing me down. I got to take you off. I got to put you up on that tree. Because you done had me doing some of those things over there. And we have to lay that weight aside. Because if not, it's going to make us do something over here. I promise you that. We're going to do something over here. That I promise you. Because flesh just weighs you down. It's just going to weigh you down. So we have to lay aside those. We just have to lay it aside. Because, this is the same thing. I'll tell you a short story. And I know he'll want to kill me, I tell him this. But I'm going to tell this on my cousin Chuck. And that's his nickname, but I won't even use his real name. But we call him Chuck. And we was young, but we was of age. But we was at a house party. And Chuck, he's a pretty healthy eater. He don't do anything. The same as my brother, same as myself. We don't drink and all this stuff. However, Chuck, he sat right there, and there was a girl he liked in there, and the girl was drinking. So Chuck decided he gonna drink with the girl. As I said, none of us drink. I never drank, never been drunk, so I don't know what it is. But the thing is, he was the same way. He don't drink, never drank, didn't know what it was. But he decided to drink to impress the girl. Because he want to get into this fornication. That's what he was seeking. Chuck got drunk. He was so drunk, and I think he might have had only 2 or 3. I don't know if it was beers or some hard liquor. But the main thing is, he was walking, and he was trying to get back in the house. The screen door was closed. The glass door, the sliding door for the patio was closed. Chuck didn't know. Now, mind you can see the glass. Chuck running into the glass and can't figure out why he can't get in the house. Can't figure out. Want to know what's going on. Running into the glass with his face. Can't get in the house. It was funny as all get out. Because he was yelling his members to assist, to hope that he can get into fornication. And got drunk. Yield his members over to sin. Those things is what we don't want to do. We got to lay aside every weight. And that sin is in that flesh. You got to lay that flesh on the side. And it says, and sin which doeth so easily beset us. That's what all it did. He liked what he seen. Easily beset us. Could we see that sin? Oh, ooh, boy, look at that there. I don't care. It can be people. It can be items, vehicles, houses, stuff. Easily beset us. Easily. You can see trying to keep up with what they say, keep up with the Joneses. How to keep up with the Joneses. Biggest thing is this. You'll see the Joneses, they go get a big RV, buy the big house, do those things. And we see, and we don't like it. So the same thing, we're going to go right back over here to flesh. And we got envyings. Envyings sitting in there, jealousy. Because envyings, that's what it is. It's jealousy. Who are they? So what we do, we go in debt. To go get that house up on the hill next door. Go buy that big car. You don't want to get a Mercedes 250. You want to get that Mercedes AMG. To where it's going to set you all the way back. And then guess what? Easily beset, trying to keep up with some Joneses. But it says right here, let us run with patience the race that is set before us. And we done looked to the side and seen them Joneses over there rolling around with that new Mercedes. And now we want what they have. We want that new Escalade, what they have. Using our members to do unrighteousness. All because of envy. Because we got into our flesh. We went and took that right up off the tree and got into our flesh. So he did these things, and he set these things up in us to where we can always know what's happening. And when you look at Genesis chapter 3, picking up at verse 16, it says this. It says, unto the woman, he says, he's talking to our spirits, but he's letting us know exactly what he's going to do. Unto the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow in thy conception. In sorrow, because you see he's pivoting. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband. Now we're going to unpack it. Because most people keep thinking he's talking only to the woman and talking about a physical woman. And that's not who he's talking to. He's talking to your spirit. And he's unpacking something serious here. Because he's saying, I'm going to multiply your sorrow. In sorrow, I'm going to multiply it. He going to really unpack this. It's really sad on how we're going to see this. But what he's telling you here is, he's going to greatly multiply our sorrow. Meaning what? He's going to greatly multiply our regrets, our unhappiness, our state of position. He's telling you this right here in Genesis. And it says even more. Greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. That's why he's saying it that way. Conception is the fertilization or the planting of the wicked thoughts in your mind. This is okay. Well, let's go down. Let's over here, Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. It says, let me see. We want Genesis. Oh, I'm in Galatians. I'm sorry. We want Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. It says, and God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, in every imagination of the thought of his heart was only evil continually. Our conception was evil. All our thoughts was evil. Everything that we was conception, everything that we was fertilizing in our head. So he said, so in sorrow, I'm going to make you regret these things. I'm going to give you great unhappiness when you push those things out there. You do those, I'm gonna show you what you're all about. And it says, in sorrow, and thou shalt bring forth children. So people saying that, oh no, that's talking. See, he's talking about kids. No, that's not what he's saying. That's not what he's saying. Because the same reason women go through those birth pains is the same reason your children are going to learn the same thing that you taught them. How to sin. But your desire shall be to your husband, the one you are to follow. And if you're going to follow and you're making Satan your husband, you're going to go through this every step of the way. And you're going to regret unhappiness, but the children are going to go through it also. And your desire should be to him, and that's the ones who should be ruling over you, which is yielding your members unto God. This is clear in Scripture. Clear in Scripture. Things we need to think about. Things we need to hold on to. Because if we are serving to sin, there's no way you're going to please God. It's impossible. In John chapter 8, to get just a little bit more of this, John chapter 8, picking it up at verse 34. Picking it up at verse 34. And it says this, he says, verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is a servant of sin. You yielding your members over to sin, and then how can you tell God you're not a servant to sin? We got people out there telling you that the law is done away with, and they doing service and yielding their members to sin, to sinful things. So how are they not yielding their members? How are they yielding their members to sin, but they're servants of God? They serving God and mammon. That's stupidity. These are things where we got to watch what we do. We got to watch what we do. and making sure we yielding our members to who we yield our members to. Because if we're going to become a servant of sin, then you might as well shut the book and be the best crook. Yeah, many people sit there and they want to tell you, oh no, we can do this and do that. The law is done away with. The law is done away with that. Jesus paid all of it, so now I can sin all day. It's craziness all the way around. But the thing is, if you're going to serve sin, you yielding your members to Satan. As the Bible even tells us back in the law under Leviticus chapter 25, picking that up at verse 55, to pull a little bit more information here. And it says, for unto me the children of Israel, for unto me the children of Israel, for unto me Christ, the children of Israel, supposedly you and I are servants. The reason you see that in that way, because we quickly go over to the New Testament. The first thing come out of our mouth is, we are children. We are sons. And he's telling you in the law, you're a servant. They are my servants, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord thy God. Why is it there and everybody look at it another way? He said, I will not alter or change anything that's gone from my lips. I will change not. However, we sit there and we let people lie to us and believe since we are sons, we can do other things and get away with them. Yielding our members over to sinful things. This is what we do. Same thing is, my daughter, she can kind of get away with almost with murder sometimes with me. I'm not going to sit there and sugarcoat it or anything. And the main thing is this. You got sons can get away with murder with the mothers on a lot of things. But you see here, he's saying you're a servant. So if you need to do something to make sure that you're on the right road, you're a servant. But if you're going to be in debt to someone, you want to make sure you're in debt to God. And it tells you the same thing every time, but people going to sit there and guarantee somebody going to sit there and try to repurpose this some kind of way, move you away from completely from the Bible, tell you a bunch of stuff, and don't you think this is right? Don't you think this? And you got somebody going to be foolish enough and they're going to sit there and say, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah. Lean not into your own understanding, but I guarantee you they still will. They're still going to do it no matter what. In Leviticus chapter 11, picking it up at verse 45. At verse 45, it says, for I am the Spirit of God that brought you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God. He said, he don't say sitting there saying to be your father, to be your daddy, to be your God. I don't know what part we'd be missing here. So when he's telling you, if you're going to be a servant, either you're going to be a servant unto sin or you're going to be a servant unto righteousness. And we know that the Most High God is righteous. And he's saying you're going to be with me, you're going to be righteous. And he says, ye shall therefore be holy. So we need to be holy because he is holy. Well, I am holy. He's telling you this. But we have so many people think that they're sons and feel I can do things my way, yielding their members over to unrighteousness, yielding their members over to complete unrighteousness. This is the problem that we have. So these are things we need to look at and really think about. Because when you get down into verse 17, he tells you a lot more here. He says, but God be thanked. God be thanked. God be thanked that we were the servants of sin, but ye have obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine which was delivered to you. And I want you to think on that as next week as we come in, because it's going to be unpacking some things for you. But let's get these precepts in here. We want to get these precepts in here and go through it and make sure that you guys have this in here. So we're going to go in here. We're going to pick this up right there. And we're going to put in Romans 6:19. We got Psalms 145:17, 119, and we got 142. We got also 23 and 6. 1 second, I got we got Genesis 6:17, Ecclesiastes 12 and 7. Let me go down to the next one. Genesis 4 and 7, Colossians 2 and 14, Hebrews 12 and 1, and we got Genesis 3:16, as well as 6 and 5. We got John 8:34, Leviticus 25:55, and we got 11:45. Might have to move it over to another. Well, this is good right here because that was it. So, and what I want you to do, we want to look at a couple of things. I want you to put in this. I'm going to put in this, and we want to understand a couple of things. You don't see it there, but I want to put it there because I want to show you what conception means. And the reason I want that there is because I want you I want that there because I want you to keep that in mind. And I'm going to show you why in 1 second. I want that there. And there's one other one I want to make sure that you guys had there. So just give me 1 second. I want to get to it. Because there's one other one. And here it is. And this is, excuse me. Yeah. Yield. I want that there, and it's telling you to make or as servants. Why I want that there, now I can show you. We're going to, but first I want you to save that. I want you to save that. Now, this is conception according to the Bible. Why? And yield according to the Bible. Because the conception is the same thing on what the fertilization or planting a wicked thought. Meaning, so if we make ourselves servants, we're going to be obedient to one or the other. And the main part is, whether we are sin unto death. So we're going to sin unto death. The reason I wanted conception there is because this is the thought that you had on whatever it was, on why you want to go the direction you want to go. That's a wicked thought if the thought is not coming from God. Because we're under a covenant with him. We're not under a covenant with ourselves to where we can adjust it as we go. 2, we got the yield. And yield, excuse me, as he's sitting there saying, ye yield yourselves, servants, to obey. So we're going to make or provide ourselves as servants to something. That's why I want that there. That's why I wanted that there. So we just understand what's happening here. So when you sit there, see this here, this will kind of give you a fast look at it before you even start going through your precepts. That's why I wanted that there. And so what I'm going to do, I don't know if everybody was clear on this, but if you're not, I don't have a problem going in the back to where we can look at it and see what's happening here. I don't have no problem going into the back and doing that. So let me, I'm going to set part of that up right now. And then I can put it in there where you can come in the back, and if you got all full clarity, we're good. So what we're going to do is, let me hit this schedule to where we can do it. So just give me one quick second, and we're going to take care of that from here. So I can do it this way, and it can be a lot faster. A lot faster. So give me 1 second. And I'm getting ready to put this in the description to where you can actually join the meeting. And that is now saved. So if you want to join the meeting, then what you can do is refresh your screen, and you will see that there. You'll see that there. And then I'm gonna make sure I take care of my mother and my wife on that side to make sure they can see the link. So you'll see the link, but you have to refresh the screen, and you'll see everything there to where you can actually access what you need. And we'll be back there to where we can take care of any questions that you may have upon there. So with that, 1 second, we're gonna just move forward. And what we're gonna do, I'm gonna go in the back and see what questions that we might have, and we'll go from there. So with that, I appreciate everybody who has joined us for this session, and then we'll be picking this up next week. So with that, I say to each and every person, until next time, shalom.